Hi there, it's Manda again. I'm coming on today to talk about CBT. What is CBT? It's a lot of things in various universes. Some people would think of it standing for compulsory bike training. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Or computer-based training. Not that either. There's other ones we won't go into. Let's just talk about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So presumably, if you watch this video, you want to know a bit more about it and maybe what to expect when you do treatment. I want to start with a caveat. If you said to me, describe Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet to me, and I presented you with 22 letters of the alphabet and said, well, it's made up from these and a few others, you would be very much uninformed and clueless really as to what was to come. And I think the CBT is a bit like that. What I'm going to do today is show you some very, very fundamentals, very, very basic stuff. And just please bear in mind that that is a tiny proportion of what you would get if you're working with an experienced CBT therapist. So cognitive behavioral therapy, way of understanding our experiences to help us to find out what's going on, find out what we can do and how to get out of the problems that we're in. So it's really, really popular. That's because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's helpful. Other therapies are also helpful, but they perhaps don't have quite as much evidence. Some of them are catching up, so some of them are starting to. So don't think it's the only thing available, and I certainly don't think it's the only thing available, nor do I think it's always the most effective thing. I do think a lot of it depends on the practitioner that you get, in terms of experience and just gelling with you, really. That's really important, because I think there's a bit of a myth out there that cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't really rely on the therapeutic relationship to be helpful. That's totally and utterly wrong. It's absolutely a relational therapy when it's done well, in my opinion. There may be other cognitive behavioral therapists out there who would argue otherwise, but in my opinion, all therapy is based on a really good therapeutic relationship. And some of the more basic types of CBT may not be so dependent on that relationship. They may be a little bit more formulaic, a little bit more manualized, and not quite so individualized to the person. So bear all that in mind. It's as everything, there's ranges of knowledge, aren't there? There's a tiny snippet, and then there's a whole ton. There's a whole 9 yards, the whole massive amount, decades of experience will bring to somebody. So just to say, all things do not suit all people. It's really important you've got a relationship with your therapist so that you can talk these things through. Today, I'm going to give you, hopefully, those sort of that basic vocabulary of CBT so that you feel a bit more informed about what it is that you might be getting into. So to do that, we're going to look at what is known as a 5 areas, or some people call it a 5 aspects. It used to be called a hot cross bun. I do believe they changed it because that kind of might not be very meaningful to people unless they were, raised with the traditions of Easter and hot cross buns. So it's a little bit exclusionary. So now we generally do call them 5 areas or 5 aspects, and it's a much better way to describe them because everybody can understand a model of any kind, whether it's a model of education, a model of communication or therapy, but a model with 5 parts. That's it's as simple as that. So let's have a look at this model of 5 parts. What you have is a circle, an outer circle, crossed through the middle. You have titles for these 4 ends of the cross. So thoughts goes at the top, and then emotions, behavior, and body. You can pretty much put those where you want. It doesn't matter quite so much. It's quite important that thoughts is at the top. And the 5th area, in case you're wondering, is external to the circle, and that's called situation. So this is a method by which you can take a snapshot of any difficult situation using these headings and working with it from this point. So your therapist will possibly suggest that you do one of these diagrams, these models, these exercises at a point when you notice that you're feeling really rubbish, Or they may decide that the best time for you to do it is when you notice a shift in your mood. Those tend to be the two times that you would make a point to remind yourself, I must do a 5 areas. So let's imagine that you get in from a busy day at work and other people in the house have been in for a while, or perhaps they never went out at all. Perhaps you are the only worker in the house. And you get in and you're greeted with a sight of chaos, a sight of mess, a sight of loads of work. You know, you can't even begin to prepare the evening meal without sorting out the stuff that's already there. Pretty horrible experience, pretty common experience. Any experience can be mapped with one of these. We're just trying to extract the main points and categorize them to help you to move on from that position. So don't think this is the kind of example you have to have. It could be anything. It could be an argument with a partner. It could be a difficult conversation at work. It could be anything at all. So let's have you, first of all, describing that situation. So in just a few words, write it out. Situation: in from work, mess in the kitchen, felt really annoyed or really upset, whatever, just describe it. Then, first one to go to is usually thoughts. That's usually the most helpful one to do first. So see if you can pinpoint some of those thoughts. It's difficult at first. You will get better at this. This is a case of practice, practice, practice with these diagrams. Nobody that I've ever met or worked with, and that's a lot of people, have ever been able to do these right first time. There might be one out of thousands. Whoever did one correctly first time just somehow got it. That's really unusual. I don't think I got it first time. But I've done thousands of these, so obviously I'm pretty good at doing them now, and I can instantly see how to organise them. Whereas when you're a beginner, it's actually quite tricky. So like many things that I found in life to be useful, it is complex enough to be beneficial, but it is simple enough that you can get the hang of it quite quickly. So don't be deterred if at first you find these a little bit tricky to manage. And if you feel that you're kind of contradicting yourself or arguing with yourself about, oh, is that a thought or is that an emotion or where does that go? In a way, that process is actually really useful. So don't worry about that. Let's just see if you can capture your thoughts at that time. So the kinds of thoughts that you might want to put down are things like, nobody cares about me, everybody's been selfish, I don't matter, I'm just a skivvy, I'm just a slave, whatever they are. You know, everyone will have different thoughts at this point. They might be angry thoughts, they might be self-deprecating, they might be really sad thoughts. There's a whole range of thoughts that you could put down here. So let's get some of those down onto the diagram. And let's move to one of the other categories. We just mentioned feelings, so let's go over to feelings and do those. How about sad, angry, various feelings that you might be having while you are in this situation. So just a word about when you would do this diagram. Ideally, you'll get to the point where these just roll off the top of your head, roll off your tongue. They're so easy to do, they're so quick to do. You do them automatically. You don't need any, trouble thinking about them at all. They just come to you easily. I had one client years ago who used to make a little sign that said "me time," and she noticed that her children, whenever they got upset about something, would go and hide under their duvet to compose themselves, to have a little cry before they would emerge again into the world. So she started to do that, and she put a little sign up saying "me time," explained to the children, who were a little bit older than they were when they were crying under the duvet, what the me time was all about, and always took 10 minutes for herself when she felt in a difficult position. And she went under the duvet, got out her torch and her pen and paper, and did 5 areas. It might interest you to know that even though she had problems and could potentially have been a candidate for therapy for a few months, just this one thing, this one method worked for her. It just gave her that downtime, that headspace to sort through all the overwhelming and complex experiences in a difficult moment. And she was sorted, she was right as rain. I was quite surprised. So she's the one who really stands out in all these years as really using these 5 areas in a way that I hadn't expected. But it just goes to show that different people will react differently to them. Other people, and I've had this question many times, might say, what's the point of this? And there is a point. Let me tell you that there will be something very, very helpful about separating out your experience in the moment, in a difficult moment or in a changed moment, in a moment when things have changed for the worse, probably. So just go with me on that for the moment. We'll come to it. Where were we? We'd done thoughts, put down some of the emotions, things like anger, sadness. You might struggle to come up with more than a couple. That's okay. You'll get better at it. And as you fill in one section, you might find that you suddenly have got ideas about how to fill in another section. And that's great. You know, it will all come to you. So let's think then about the bodily responses. Here, there can be all sorts of things, ranging from a sinking feeling, a lethargic feeling, to exhaustion, to something like something really physical, like shaking or feeling dizzy, heart palpitations, anything that's going on in the body that seems really notable. There'll be a couple that might come up here and you might think, is that a body response or is that a behaviour? Most people will put them into a body response because that's the most obvious and clear. It just seems more like how we used to thinking of things. But actually, your therapist might nudge you towards putting them in a behaviour because at some level there's a choice as to whether we do it. So I've seen plenty of people put in things like pacing the floor in body. And yes, you are doing that with your body. Your body is moving around the floor, pacing up and down. But it's a behaviour. It's something that you are doing. So even something like crying. I mean, tears pricking into your eyes, tears welling up might be rightly described as a bodily response. But actually sobbing or crying gives us a better picture of what was going on in that moment if you put it into the behaviour section. So those are just a couple of ideas for you to think about. And usually people will talk these things through with a therapist once they've had their first go. So, you know, this is a bit of a heads up. This is a bit of an insight into the process. So then going into behaviour, what might you put here? Pacing, you may well put that in here. You may put in here something like crying. You may put something like shouting, ranting, yelling, sitting down in a big slump, making a cup of tea and ignoring it, pouring a glass of wine and ignoring it. You know, whatever it is that you're doing in that moment, or that you do sort of immediately after the thoughts, the emotions, etc. Because these are kind of going on simultaneously, and it's important that you don't move to sort of 10 minutes after the event and then start to think about your behaviours then. You can do another one for that, go through the whole process again. 10 minutes after the event, what are your thoughts? What are your emotions? What is your body? What is your behaviour? But for this, we keep it very much in a timely manner. So what's going on in your behaviour in those moments? Get it down on the paper, whatever it is. So now you can see we're building this up. We've put in some thoughts, we've put in some emotions, we've put in some behaviours and some bodily experiences. So it's building up into a picture of that moment when you had this discovery and were feeling terrible and noticed how awful you were feeling. So one thing I want to go back to here is the behaviour bit, because many people won't think of this for a second. It just won't cross their mind to put certain things in as behaviours, but they really are. So let's say that your behaviour on the surface is that you're crashing around trying to put things right, crashing around, banging pots and pans, you know, sweeping stuff off the surfaces, trying to sort it out, trying to make some space for the next job. You know, you're exhausted, but here's another job. And there's a thought, I'm exhausted and I've got another job. Get that in. As you think about what you're doing here, other things will pop up that you can start to recognise belong in other categories. So you're looking at your behaviour, you're banging and crashing, a thought comes up. I can't even start the next job without clearing this up. But what's also going on is a process in your mind. You are going over and over negative things about the situation. Things like, they never do their share. They always leave it up to me. I never get any help. It's really unfair. And while all of those are thoughts, and I would like to see them in the thoughts category, they're also actually part of a process that is a behavioural process called rumination. It's an invisible behaviour, so it goes in the behaviour section. So you don't detail them in there, you put the content of them, the specifics, they don't care, into thoughts, but the process, write it in as rumination. And this is the chewing over old stuff. This is just like, it's from the ruminant animals, the cows that will chew over and over on the cud. So this goes into behaviour, rumination. And there's another one that goes into behaviour, which is also an invisible behaviour, and that's worrying. So worrying is future focused, rumination is past focused. So things like, what if they leave me because I get really angry about this? What if I absolutely blow my fuse and shout at them and send them all away? What if I can't cope with this for much longer and I collapse into a heap and give up and you know, don't function anymore? Those sorts of thoughts, if you're having them, put them in as content in the thought section, but the process, put it in the behaviour as worrying. So those are two invisible behaviours to think about. The only invisible behaviours that we really think about. They're the only invisible behaviours that we do think about. So, you know, there's no more surprises in that. Hopefully that's helped you to not miss those out, because they're really important. So why is all this stuff important? Okay, two reasons. The first is, what you're getting here is assessment information. You're getting really helpful, accurate, specific, categorized information on what happens to you in a difficult moment. This is so valuable, I can't even begin to tell you. It's the beginning of a treasure hunt with CBT. Your therapist will be able to help you a lot. And if you do sort of self-CBT, which some people can do through various courses or books, etc., you'll find that this is a great way to start. So that's one reason why it's useful, because it gives you that snapshot that you otherwise wouldn't capture. You know, you'd never notice this stuff. And if you didn't practice, you'd never be able to categorize it. And you'd never know what to do next with it either if you didn't do this in this methodical way. So as I said, some people find this incredibly helpful just in and of itself. And certainly that is an important point to make here. It is helpful because when you do this, you're not doing the other stuff so much. So instead of, what am I doing? Oh, I'm ranting and raving, I'm banging and crashing, I'm going into self-pity, I'm going into self-loathing. No, what am I actually doing right now is I'm analysing this situation, I'm therapying this situation, I'm collecting data. That's a totally different activity, and it's really helpful, because what you need to understand when you look at this circular diagram that we've created, and it's not finished yet, but what we've got here is the makings of a maintenance cycle. These elements in the circle maintain that stuff going on. So they maintain the situation being as bad as it is. They maintain how you feel so badly about the situation. And we can see, once we've built a few of these, what your habits tend to be, your go-to feelings, your go-to behaviours. That's very useful to discover within context. And it will also tell you how these interact with each other. Because you might have a thought such as, this is hopeless and I can't carry on doing this. And that might lead to a massive sinking feeling in the body. And what we can do is we can look particularly at thoughts. Remember, the thoughts are first in cognitive behavioural therapy. So there's a whole other exercise that we can do with thoughts, and we can, you know, I'll probably do a video about that at another time, how we can take this further and really make use of these thoughts and help us to transform our lives. That's really valuable. So I think I'll leave it there for now. Have a go at this yourself when you have a difficult moment or when you notice a mood shift. I really hope it's helpful to you. As I said, it's the first few letters of CBT. If CBT were a Shakespeare play in a fantastic production. So it's only a snippet, and it isn't all that it's about, but it's the very, very first steps. A good assessment of what's going on and a way to see how all those things relate to each other. Thanks for watching. If you like this information, please do give it a like and a comment. It will help other people to get this information if they need it. And I think a lot of people do at the moment to help themselves unravel some of the emotional and psychological distress that's going on in their lives. So thanks. Bye.